What's up everyone, my name is Royal Rebel, and in this video I'm going to be going over the Finishing Mori update that was announced September 22nd. With this update, the developers have plans to rework the entire Mori system and have plans to make unbreakable base kit. So for those of you who haven't heard, Behavior has been talking about changing the Mori system in Dead by Daylight from an offering system, which is what we currently have, to an automatic trigger event. And I know there's a lot of mixed feelings around this, but I'm just going to share my thoughts. So far, everything about the Mori update, it just kind of feels like this is somebody's pet project and what the player base has been asking for and how this will contribute to the overall health of the game. It doesn't really seem to connect to either of those. Especially if you go back and you watch the 6-year anniversary stream when these announcements were first made, the developers had a lot of concerns over Mori's being blocked by the environment or it not being the experience they hoped for. Overall, they were kind of shallow and they didn't really connect to the health of the game. But could the Mori system be improved? Sure. I just don't think this is the direction to go. I really can't say for sure what change I would make to the system, but an automatic trigger event just doesn't feel right. Personally, I really like the idea of earning Moris. I think it's really satisfying to watch and to even get a full set of Moris. In Dead by Daylight, there's like this little bit of a quirky culture around Moris as well. Like, who doesn't love to see someone photobomb your Mori? A lot of people get laughs out of that. It's just a fun, like, unexpected thing that can happen with Moris. This update, it feels like the devs definitely have an issue with this. There's also some really memorable moments that players will no longer get. So while it can be difficult to escape after being down, it is not entirely impossible. And those moments make for really hyped up games. It's the kind of moment that has like both players, they're on the edge of the seats, their noses are inching closer to the screen, and whether or not you win or lose, both players are shouting when it's over because the moment was just that intense. It feels like developers are taking away like the quote-unquote photo finish matches of Dead by Daylight. And while these are rare moments, they're moments that live in players' minds. And when this update comes out, I really wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing people reminisce about the pre-Mori times, just like people do with Hatch after its update. This update is also changing the way certain perks work, so specifically Rancor and Devour Hope will no longer have the option to Mori survivors. After the update, Rancor will instead reveal the Obsession's aura for 5 seconds and leave them permanently exposed, and then Devour Hope, you will get an instant hook sacrifice at 5 steps instead of the option to Mori. So instead of, if you were to hook somebody for the first time, they would automatically be sacrificed instead of going through their hook stages. At this point in time, I don't think this will have an effect on the mini Moris, such as like Myers doing the Tombstone effect, Sadako's Condemn, Pyramid Head's Final Judgment. These are considered special abilities, so at this time, I'm assuming that the developers are counting these as separate things, separate events. But along with this update, since offerings will no longer trigger Moris, they're obviously reworking the Mori offerings, and now they're just basically a blood point bonus. So each set of conditions includes ending the match on a Mori, but the Cypress Mori will give you 8,000 blood points if you kill 2 survivors, Ivory will give you 12,000 if you get 3 kills, and Ebony will give you 20,000 if all 4 survivors are killed in the match. An interesting mechanic that they planned on giving with this update is called Last Standing. So when there's only 1 survivor left standing, whether that's because the other players are left, they're slugged, or they're on hook, this mechanic will trigger. It's giving both the killer and the last standing survivor what's basically a base kit Shadowborn. They haven't said how much they're increasing the field of view, they just said that they are increasing it. And this will last until either another survivor recovers or is unhooked. I think the point of this is to help build up for that Mori moment, but it's a really basic thing at this time. I don't really think it's going to achieve what they hope to, as well as there's a lot of players coming forward already voicing their concerns about accessibility, because messing with the visibility of the screen can actually be harmful for certain players. But the final mechanic that they've announced in this update is called Hope is Not Lost. This is going to be better known as the base kit Unbreakable. The developers are trying to combat toxic slugging in the game, and so what they are planning to implement is that if survivors have been slugged for 45 seconds, they will then be able to pick themselves up. And this is one I think a lot of killer mains are making a bigger deal out of than they really need to. Because for context, 45 seconds is almost twice as long as it takes Unbreakable to pick up a survivor. And so most killers really aren't slugging in general, let alone long enough for Unbreakable to trigger. So if we're considering this is twice the amount of the time, this isn't really game changing. Not in my opinion anyways. I've heard a lot of players talking about well, what about snowball killers such as Myers, Oni, Plague, etc. And I disagree that slugging is a part of their snowballs. Like, Oni really just needs to start injuring survivors to get his blood fury. Most Oni are dashing between hooks with the exception of if another survivor is in close proximity, which then you generally get the down within 45 seconds. And this is the same concept with Myers. He's not hitting tier 3 the majority of the time because survivors are down on the ground. His snowball comes from players being exposed, not slugged. Realistically, the hardest hit killers with this change are going to be Huntress, and more specifically if you're a sniper Huntress because you're aiming across the map, and the twins because a part of their power comes from not being near survivors when they're down. You know, Charlotte is independent of Victor. But I really hope that the developers bring something to help balance this out for the twins, because the twins were already having a difficult enough time in gameplay to begin with, and I really do think they deserve some love. And before like someone says, what about bully squads? I really think the only effect this is going to have with bully squads is prolonging the match, which I concede is obnoxious. But at the end of the day, bully squads really aren't escaping matches because they're not doing objectives. Harassing the killer means you're not doing generators, which is required to end the match. So when it comes to like a bully squad or a super altruistic squad, the killer is still gonna win. Again, I think it's gonna be obnoxious. I will concede that, but is it really gonna affect the killer's MMR at the end of the day? No, I don't think so. However, I fully expect the next PTB to be full of killers attempting to slug test just how powerful this base mechanic is. So if you plan on doing the PTB and you really hate being slugged, I would suggest not doing it. But having seen this exact mechanic in a game like Prop Might, which is almost a cookie cutter Dead by Daylight, I don't think it's that powerful. I just think killer mains are overestimating this as a base mechanic because, like, realistically, most killers aren't slugging to begin with, so if you're not slugging, you're not gonna really notice the change. If there is a change, I do think we might see an uptick in the use of Soul Guard. Probably not a huge one, but because there's no longer a contingent on recovering and having that effect of gaining endurance when coming up from the dying state, this perk becomes a lot less situational. And just like the killer perks that had Moris as an effect, survivor perks that have this ability will be losing it as well. So Unbreakable, Soul Guard, No Mither, Boon Exponential, they'll be losing recovery mechanic as a part of their perks. But in addition, Unbreakable is going to be set to change from a 35% recovery speed to 100% recovery speed with this update. And then one last thing to note before I end this video, these changes are not going into effect after the next PTB. The developers have not said when they plan on releasing the Finishing Mori update. As of right now, they just let us know that it's not going to be ready in time for the 6.3 update, and this is just an early preview. Although if I do remember correctly, in the anniversary stream, this update was set to come out sometime in the winter, so it'll either be later this year or early next year. But that's everything that's happening with the Finishing Mori update. How do you guys feel about these changes? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more of my content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more Dead by Daylight content. And if you want to check out my Twitch streams, I currently go live on Sundays and Thursdays 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Saturdays 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.